Hi everyone. In this video, we will see how to create Azure resources to deploy two-tier web application. So when I say two-tier web application, we will be having two tier. One is the database tier and then the other one is app tier. So app tier will constitute both the front end and then the business logic. And this database tier will have the actual persisted data. Okay, for setting up this particular architecture, these are the steps which we will be following. Like we will create a resource group and then the necessary resources. Once the resources are created, my architecture will look something similar to this. I'm using a virtual machine for hosting web application. And my web application is Python-based Flask framework application. So this VM will hold my application data, and this is the VM will be exposed to the outside internet. All my customers who are on internet can access my web application directly to this VM, and this VM is connected to the database so that the data about that connected user can be fetched. Okay, let's get started. The first thing is that I need to go and create a resource group. Let me call it as project one and let it be in Southeast Asia. Let's say review create and create. Once the resource group is created, we will create one VNet with two subnet. So this VNet is for logically isolating our workload from other subscription workload. Okay, and then the subnet is segmenting within our virtual network because we are going for two-tier architecture. So I will create two subnet, one for hosting database virtual machines, another one for hosting the Flask VM. That's my front-end application code hosting. So these are the two subnets I'll be using. So let's go and create VNet. That's virtual network. Let's create. So I'll put all the resources in the resource group what I have created previously. So project one. Okay, I can name it as Flask MySQL VNet. So Flask is the front-end technology I'm using. MySQL is for the database. So I'm just naming it as it is. Let it be in Southeast Asia. Security-wise, additional security I'm not adding, but if in case we need, we can add it. So this security part, how to enhance security, we will see at the end. I'll go to IP addresses. Let's slightly modify the addresses, whatever I have given. So this subnet is going to be app subnet. And I'm going to start the address from 10.0.1.0. And one more subnet, let me add. That's for database DB subnet. This starting address, let it be 10.0.2.0. So we have the necessary subnets added already. Now let's create. So this will create one VNet with two subnets. What next? So the next thing is that these two steps are over. Next, we need to create two VM. So one in app subnet, another one in web subnet. So app subnet, we will be creating one VM for deploying our application. But in this is for just testing. But in the real production environment, we may not go for deploying a single VM. We will be creating multiple VMs. Like we may go for virtual machine scale set, and then we will apply automatic scaling over there so that based on the current customer number of current customer, the number of VM can get automatically scaled up. But for simplicity, I'll just create only one VM and I'll paste it in app subnet. And next one more VM, I'll keep it in database subnet. It looks my virtual network got created and I can go and check my subnets. Yes. So let me just duplicate two more tabs, one per VM. Let me search for virtual machine. And here also I'll search for virtual machine. Okay, here let me create my first VM. Okay, the subscription, I'll select my subscription and then the resource group to be project one. Virtual machine name. So I can give Flask VM or app VM, whatever it is. Let me just give Flask VM. And I want to create it in Southeast Asia because that's where my virtual network lies. And I don't need any infrastructure redundancy. And I'm using for both front end and then the database, I'm using this Ubuntu server itself. So I'll use Ubuntu 24. And then the size, let this be enough. And I don't need SSH. I'll just go with password based. Maybe I can give a VM as a username, and this is the password. Okay. Okay. Because this is the front end. So I first need to take SSH so that I can configure. For that, I'm going to open SSH port. It's a Linux based. Also, once everything is configured, database connectivity is set, then users will start accessing our application. So users will be accessing our application at the port number 80. So for that reason, I'm just opening these two ports for this particular VM. One is for web application by the end user. Another is for admin to configure this particular VM. So these two ports are open. In disk, no modification. Networking, I need to make sure that this VM is getting created in the right subnet. So it must be in app subnet. That is, and next. I don't need any load balancer because I'm just going to create only one instance. In case if I'm going for multiple, then I could have gone for VMSs. Okay, management, nothing, monitoring, nothing. Let's review, create, and create. Yeah, meanwhile, when this is getting created, let's go and create next VM. That's for MySQL. So here in this VM, it's again infrastructure as a service. So for this particular project, I have chosen complete infrastructure as a service. Same app can also be deployed as platform as a service as well. Maybe at the end of this video, I will just give you what services we can use if in case I'm planning to go for PaaS. So this is a VM I need to create. So once I create this VM and see this VM, I need to connect as an admin. I need to connect. So I will open 22 for this particular VM so that I can connect SSH to this VM and configure this VM. Also, none other than 22. Okay, port should be open because this is only for database purpose. So this database called MySQL will be open at port number 3306. And who will access it? Actually, the app tier will access it. So app tier will access this particular VM at the port number 3306. So I need to open these two ports. One, this for me, and this is only for this particular Flask VM to connect to them. So while creating VM, we will see how we can enable these two. Okay, the first VM got created successfully. Now let's concentrate creating the second VM. Let me put it in project one, VM to be DB VM. So VM to be DB VM, let it be in Southeast Asia, no infrastructure redundancy, same Ubuntu server and password. I'll give the same username and password just to reduce the complexity of remembering multiple username and password. Okay, if you see here directly, you only can enable SSH for yourself. Okay, maybe once we create this VM, We'll go back to NSG and then we will configure the 3306 port number. Right now I'll say SSH, that's enough. Disk, no modification. Networking, I need to make sure that this is getting created in DB subnet because we use two subnets for segmentation. One for application, another one is for the database. So this is database, I'll put it in DB subnet and rest I will leave default and create this particular resource. Fine, I just triggered the creation of this particular virtual machine. Let's go back to the previous VM. And this is the VM where we need to deploy our application. So this is a fresh VM. I can directly go and deploy my application. I need to configure this VM, right? So what all I need to do first, I need to update this. Okay, I'll just put those steps here. I need to update and then install Python. And for Python, we usually prefer virtual environment so that we can even run multiple versions of Flask. So maybe for one project, I can go for Flask version 2, another, the previous version. Like that, I can have multiple versions of Flask so that if we have this virtual environment, so we will also enable this virtual environment. These are more specific to Python Flask framework. I'm not getting inside much details about it. I'm just going to install these things. So first update Python, then the virtual environment, and then the pip package manager. Everything will be installed. And then we will write a simple web app code, a Flask code, and we will test it. Let's get started. And that's what is this like. Okay, before that, we need to also configure this NSG, right? So we'll complete that and then go for connecting to this VM. So let's go and configure NSG first. So this is first VM and this is second VM, app VM. For this, let me just go and check the network settings. I'm supposed to allow 22 and 80. 22 for system admin to connect to this VM. 80 is for any end user to connect to this VM for accessing the web application. So these two are enabled already. But for database, I need to enable 3306. I need to enable port number 3306, but not for all. It's enabled only for this particular VM, or I might even go for multiple VMs. So I can enable for this entire subnet address space. So that is what I'm going to do. 22 is enabled, fine. I'll create one more inbound port role. Not any, I'll go with some particular IP addresses. And that particular IP addresses also, I will choose this one, that's 10.0.1.0/24. It means any VM from app subnet. But I have only one VM. I can even directly give that VM's IP also, a single IP, that's fine. But in production environment, we may have multiple VMs running in that subnet. So in such case, it's better to give the subnet CIDR range itself. Okay, port number can be any. The destination is also an IP address. And you can give the subnet a range of, yeah, a subnet range of this DB subnet. Okay, so 10 dot, that's the thing. And then it's a MySQL. So when you select MySQL, it's automatically takes 3306. That's expected. We need to give a name. Allow 3306. So from this source to this particular destination, we are allowing 3306. Perfect. Now the NSG configuration is done. Now let's go and connect to this app VM and do install the necessary softwares and packages. For that, I'll just go here. I'll go to overview tab and I try to connect. I get the command to connect from my command prompt. So I can simply type SSH space VM at the public IP of this particular VM so that I can connect to this VM through SSH. So for that, let me open a command prompt. Let me bring it here, slightly zoom in. Yeah, I paste it. Yes, I want to connect. And I need to give the password. If my password is correct, then it will connect to that VM. Okay, for simplicity, I have a set of commands to be executed. So quickly, I will do one thing, just copy, paste, and execute the necessary commands. Okay, I'll just go first, run this command to update this sudo apt update and upgrade. It will take some time. Yeah, it took near about a minute to update and upgrade. Now let's go and execute the next command. So this command, so the first command what I have executed will update my Linux operating system itself. And this command, I'm installing Python 3 runtime, and also I'm installing virtual environment and then the Python package manager. Just why is yes, I am accepting. So all these packages needs to be installed. Right. So now we have the necessary software to run Flask web framework. Now what we need to do, let's go and create a simple web application using Flask and run it. For that, I will just create a directory called Flask app. And then let's get inside that directory. And let's create a virtual environment for Python. That's Python 3 hyphen M venv. That's great. Now let's activate this particular virtual environment. So once I activate this virtual environment, after that, whatever I install is installed only to this virtual environment called venv, and it is not installed for the whole system. So like that, when you are having multiple project, per project, you can go and have your isolated environment and that necessary package is installed. So that doesn't affect the other projects. Source venv inactivate. And you can see that it's stating venv. You are in the virtual environment called venv. From here on, whatever we install will be installed not to the whole Unix system, but only to this virtual environment. And next thing is that let's install these commands. I have command to upgrade pip, and then I have a command to install Flask, and then Python-based MySQL client, and then some cryptographic algorithm necessity for communication to the backend. And let's try to install them. Great, everything is done. So now we are ready for running our first Flask application. For that, let me just open an editor and give it a name, application name. App.py is my application name, and Nano is an editor. So here I need to paste my program. Let me just copy paste this program. Okay, I'm not again going to the details of this particular program. I'll keep it very simple. we are concerned only about the Azure resources what we are using for deploying this particular two-tier web application. And one thing is that like this I'm setting, so when I run this web application, it's a simple web application. Flask is running, just a simple message web application. It will run and listen at the port number 5000. So I need to also enable this 5000 in my Flask VM's energy. So we will do that later. Now let's copy, paste it, come out. And now let's run this program for that Python app.py. And you can see that it is listening at the local host. So there are two ways I can test whether it is working fine or not. One is going to the web browser and getting the public IP. So that we will do that now. So this is my public IP. We'll just copy this public IP and go to incognito window. And actually, Python is exposing itself. That application what I have executed is exposing at the port number 5000. But when I hit, it should access. But the thing is that we have not enabled this port number in this VM's energy. Now let's go and enable that port number here in the network security group. Inbound port can give any the custom port number. Let it be 5000 and allow all 5000 and say add. Yeah, the inbound rule got created. Now let's go and refresh this once again. Might take a couple of seconds for the rule to come into force. I can close, try to open once again and access at the port number 5000. Yes, Flask VM is running. So this is one way. Another way, if you don't want to test and you want to test it in the command line, you can start another session here. Connect to the same VM. So you are already connected to this VM. So you connect to the same VM again, and you can run this command called curl and then http double slash localhost 5000. So when you run this command, again, same message, a Flask is running. Okay, will be printed here. But anyways, let's continue. Okay, fine. So Python installation, Flask installation, everything is perfect. Now the next thing is that we need to connect to the database VM, install MySQL there and create some necessary MySQL users and database so that we can run some front end so that from front end we can send some data to the backend database. Okay, for that, let's go and connect to second VM. So this is my second VM. And this is the IP. Okay, I'll just go and pull the command itself to connect. That's SSH space VM. This is the username, and this is the public IP of this particular VM. Let me copy this, go for a new command line, new command prompt. I'll also bring that here as well. Paste it. Okay, I think I didn't copy properly. Let me just copy this. Yes, I want to connect, and then the password is this. Yeah, got connected to this VM. Next thing is that we need to update this VM. The Linux operating system gets updated. Next thing is we need to install MySQL Server. Okay, the Linux soft operating system update is over. Now let's install MySQL Server. Okay, now the MySQL software is installed. Now let's enable it, start it, and check the status of it. It is started, enabled. Every time when this VM is restarted, the MySQL server will automatically start and it is running perfect. Next thing is that we need to set some security related configuration to this MySQL. For that, let me run my next command. Yes, I want to change some security settings. Password, let it be the default. So I'll just simply say zero, no password. I'm going to change. I'll let the default password be there. And then I want to remove anonymous user. Yes, I want to remove anonymous user and disallow root login remotely. I can say no for this. Yeah, test databases and access to it. The default access to is I can remove it. Yeah, I can also remove this as well and all done. So this is an extra step. If you want, you can even skip this step, but for security reason, we can just remove some default settings and usernames here. Once this is done now, let's connect to this VM. So let's connect to this MySQL. The password is root. I didn't change. Yeah, I'm inside MySQL. Now let's create a database. What is this database? This is the database where the tables or the data related to my application gets stored. So this is just a starting point for my data, my application's data. So all my application data will be under this table database. And after this, we will be creating multiple tables and we will bring normalization between the table, all these things. And that's the entire story of MySQL. Okay, fine. So I have created a table, sorry, database. Now let's create some user. Okay, fine. So I have created one user called Flask user with the password this. Let's also create a table. Okay, I did exit, right? So I'll just use this command to get inside and create a table. Use Flask. Yes, this is the database. Now, if I create any table, that will be created under this particular table. Yes, it's done. The table also got created. I can exit my SQL and just back to my virtual machines operating system cursor. Now let's configure MySQL to accept remote connections. So by default, it will be accepting from the local host. Let's modify that so that it can get connection from anywhere outside. So this will open this file. In this file, I'll just go to a line where I have bind address. So this must be modified to 0.0.0. all zeros. It'll accept from anywhere, not just from the local system itself. Okay, let me save this, Control X, Y, and hit enter. Now let's restart this MySQL because we did some modification to its configuration file. Let's restart. Perfect. So almost everything is done. Now let me just go to my architecture. See here, we have two VM. Both the VMs are created. And in the first VM, we installed all the softwares and packages related to the front end. That's Flask. And then the business logic, everything we can write it here. And next is this database VM. In here, we installed MySQL and created database and then created this table. Everything is perfect. Now we need to go and slightly modify our coding. So previously we just wrote as very basic code. Now we will go and write simple code with some basic UI, HTML, and then the business logic for getting data from the HTML and inserting inside this SQL. So for that, let's try to modify. Let me stop this. For this, I'll use Control C. Now I'll do one thing. I'll remove the existing app.py and create a new one. And in here, I will just add my program. After adding, I need to modify one thing here. My database is running in this server, right? So that server's private IP I need to give. That's 10.0.2.4. And this is a Flask user. I just created this user in that database and I'm using that user ID and then the password. And then the database name is FlaskDB. Hope nothing is inconsistent in terms of names. Okay, fine then. So we need to also create a index page also. So let me just save this. Yeah, my app.py is created. Now I need to create another file under templates folder called index.html. So in here, let me add this HTML code. Okay. The session is, let me just try to reconnect once. ACMD. Need to get this command to connect to this SSH VM and then I need this public IP. This VM. Yeah, Flask VM. So here I need to connect, right? So I'll just get the IP address of this, not just IP, the entire command. Let's say CMD. Let me get inside Flask. Let me get inside. Okay, so here only I need to create. So, okay, I need to first start the environment, right? So let me say source. venv pin activate. Yes, now let's create this nano template as index.html. We copy this command HTML file code again. Instead, let me do one thing. I'll go with the VI editor. After the reconnect again, let's go with the command. Okay, let's get inside Flask. Let's start the virtual environment. VI editor. I'm sure VI editor would be there. Otherwise, I'll just create that directory first. mkdir called templates and cd templates. And I don't have any file here. Now let's create this vi index.html. Yeah, let me now paste this. Oh, let me copy the file again. Ah, at last. Wait, let me just copy this, and that's it. So now when I say ls, we have index.html, and that's under this templates folder. Now we have the Python file. Now let's go and run this particular program. That's Python app.py. Yes, it says it is running and listening at this particular port number. Now let's go and check. Let me pull the IP address. This is the IP. Go to my incognito window and access this IP at the port number 5000. Let's say continue. Yes, it's working. So this is the front end and then the business logic. So I can enter some details here. I can say my name, then I can give some data here. So no validation, just pulling some data, adding to the database. Okay, it's not allowed to connect to MySQL server. There is some error. Let me just fix this and come back. Yeah, perfect. It started working. I did a mistake while executing some command in the MySQL part. And I just added some comment line and executed some command. That is why it didn't add. So Now it's perfect. So there is one data what I have added already here, and I can even add multiple things. User added. So two user data is added from my front end. So I'm just trying to connect. So I'll just take you back to my architecture. See, I'm one of the user. I'm connected to this particular VM at the port number 5000, and whatever the data I'm producing through that particular HTML is taken by this Flask and added to the database table here. And that's what is happening. And this is just a simple setup, a two-tier architecture setup. We can even bring in some security mechanisms, like if you want. Okay, so we can also introduce Azure Firewall, and we can filter all the traffic which is coming from internet. Let me, yeah. So all, let's say this is the internet user or the end user wants to access this Flask. So instead of exposing this Flask directly, what we can do, we can allow through this particular firewall. So what kind of application may need this kind of setup is your company's legacy application. So your company's legacy application might be running in only one VM because maybe your number of users might be 200 or 300. So for that, one VM is enough. So for one VM, we can just use this Azure Firewall subnet, and this is Azure Firewall. Azure Firewall service itself for filtering the traffic. And if yours is a full-blown web application where millions of end users are there, then you can think of deploying your web application with this architecture. So when you're having more user, then you need to bring in scaling. So you can, instead of using VM, we can go for virtual machine scale set. And also here, we can use virtual machine scale set. And all the traffic, okay, we can direct to one internal load balancer. This is a Azure load balancer, but internal Azure load balancer. It takes request from the application tier. All the VMs of application tier will be sending a request to the load balancer. This load balancer will be balancing the load among multiple VMs available. That's one thing. And one more thing for the end user. These are the application users, right? So for them, we can have an application gateway. So this is the endpoint where everyone will reach, and this application gateway will be distributing the balance among all the running virtual machine comes under application tier. And for this application gateway, we can even bring in WAF, web application firewall. So that's one option. One more option is like you can even bring in one more load balancer that is also can be a kind of external load balancer. And instead of using application gateway, we can even use front door. And with front door, we can also achieve one more thing, that we can cache the content on almost all the POP locations so that user get the static pages or static content very fast when compared to other type of service usage. And that's it. Thank you for listening to this video.